This wedding was her party to re-enter Hollywood. That's why all the celebrities were invited. That's why she kicked her dad off the list and invited an entertainment lawyer. I mean, I had no idea how clear it was that this was her party for herself and who she was hoping to be next, and had nothing to do with her wedding to Harry. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Revenge Review. We're going through Tom Bower's Revenge. And the last episode that we did, if you have not had a chance to go watch it, you guys, stop everything right now. Forget this video. You can come back to it. Go back and watch the other one. Because that was crazy. Crazy town. When it came to those pictures that Thomas Markle had taken in order to regenerate his image. And then he lied to Meghan and told Meghan I wasn't working with a photographer, but it was really obvious that he had. And she got really mad and claimed that she had been betrayed by her dad. And we talked extensively about why we thought it didn't really seem like that much of a betrayal. So the man wanted to fix his image. He was being smeared everywhere as this fat slob who had abandoned his daughter. Why wouldn't he try to make it look like he was part of her life and how he was planning on going to the wedding and everything? Because Doria had been around the daughter all the time. Nobody was questioning Doria's love for Meghan, even though Doria had never even been in Meghan's life her whole growing up. Doria was in and out, disappeared for years and years. And yet now that the world's watching, now that Doria can help Meghan continue to progress her own narrative that she thinks is going to make her more popular, now Doria is the parent that she has time and attention for. But Thomas Markle, because he is unkempt and he's overweight, that means she can't have him because he's going to not have the right visual for the world that she's now part of. So we talked all about the passive-aggressive text that she was sending him when she found out that he was in the hospital having heart attacks. And it was just astounding that she could be so hateful, so incredibly hateful, and so, it was just really obvious that because the eyes of the world were on her and her relationship with her dad, and there was some question about whether her dad was coming to the wedding or not, suddenly she's sending security guards to his house and doing all these things that he had asked for in the beginning, but he's in the hospital. So why is she sending security guards to his house where he isn't even at, just so that the world can see that she was doing something for her dad, but he was just this, out of control, selfish, narcissistic man who was turning away all her help. What else could she do? And she said that in a text message. Not sure what you want us to do if you won't accept the help we're sending. But she was sending help ages after he needed it. Wild chapter. And just really highlighted the chaos of the whole Markle-Raglan clan, but mostly the Markle clan. Just a lot of crazy going on over there. A lot of circus clowns doing their act. And you can see why Meghan is as unstable as she is, because the whole clan seems to have a kind of streak of crazy. Now, she's taking it like next level crazy. And she's like diabolical. I mean, she's just not like Some of the other Markles, it just looks like maybe life is unorganized for them, and there's maybe like a proactive issue going on where they aren't maybe like on top of things the way they should, and then they're always playing catch up. But with Meghan, Meghan's not behind. She's always trying to move ahead, and she's always planning her progression at the cost of everybody else. She doesn't care about how she succeeds or how she finds herself in a seat of success or how she finds herself, one leg up. If it meant that she had to destroy people in the process, that means next to nothing to her. What does she care? All she cares about is, but did I get up the next rung? Am I climbing the ladder? So, wild episode. So if you haven't seen it, make sure that you don't miss that one. And I was thinking about anything in the comments. We were all tracking with each other in the comments. Everyone was. I think the only thing that some people don't like my characterization of Samantha Markle. I think most of us would agree that there's just a lot going on there. And I won't get into it. we can have disagreements about Samantha Markle. I'm fine with that. And then the only other thing that I would say that I do want to address, because I haven't been super clear about this in the episodes, and I'm sorry. I keep making reference to the fact that there may have been a pregnancy, like a claim of pregnancy, and that's why they rushed the wedding. To be very clear, Tom Bower never says that. The closest he got to that topic was when Harry makes the claim to Thomas Markle. My children's life are going to be in danger. Because he had taken those pictures. And it didn't make any sense why Harry would say that. They do not currently have children, nor does the world know or believe that she's pregnant. I mean, that, for people on the outside, like, what kind of weird claim is that? Now, if Harry has been functioning for many months believing that Meghan is either pregnant with one baby or two, it would assume she may have told him she was having twins because he said, my children's life will be in danger. So Tom Bower winks at that bit of gossip that had gone out, that there was some kind of pregnancy. But he never openly discusses it. He never openly discusses the fact that there were inner office memos that suggested they better rush things along because of a potential baby. Now, he doesn't mention it. And the only reason I know anything about this is because people in the comments have made a lot of commentary about the fact that she was potentially pregnant, and that's one of the reasons. That, and coupled with, we want to look like we're very sensitive to multicultural issues. We would like to bring in some more diversity into the royal family. Let's usher her in so that we can show the world and show our very multi-ethnic country that is becoming more and more multicultural and multi-ethnic, that we care about them, and also to all the Commonwealth, who, you know, everybody's not white in the Commonwealth. You know, we want you to have representation. So those were the two things. And like I said, Tom Bower only makes mention of the fact that there was a racial element to ushering her in quickly and wanting to please Harry. Those are the two things he emphasizes. They desperately wanted to please Harry. They were glad he'd found somebody who seemed okay with being in the spotlight. And there was a racial element. But the comments are the ones that brought me the tidbit about, and people said she was pregnant. And she claimed to be pregnant. And Harry's comment about my children's life are going to be in danger is confirmation that something was happening. Thomas Markle clearly did not know what rumor this was. He didn't know anything about this because he was flabbergasted and thought it was a crazy dramatic statement to make. And it does sound crazy dramatic. But if you consider the fact that there was a potential pregnancy fueling their rush to the altar, it makes more sense. Okay, that's all that I had to say. This chapter is all about the wedding. You guys, that wedding was such a hot mess. I can't wait to get into it. I mean, just visually, it was a mess. Not as far as the organization of it, but there was just so many things that felt like this is a sham. And we can start with the bride herself. She looked like a hot mess. Her hair was in her eyes. Her dress didn't fit. The bridesmaids' dresses looked clunky. Like, there was just so many things that were just like, y'all should have dotted your I's and crossed your T's before this went out. But let's just go straight into it. As always, I would ask that you would like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. I've said this before, when different content starts going out with the other book, I don't know how the algorithm is going to feel about that. So if you want to end up getting those videos as well, it would be a good idea to go ahead and hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of the videos. If you intend to follow along with our other book, Stories I Tell Myself, by Juan Thompson, the son of Hunter S. Thompson, I would highly recommend you hit that bell for notifications so you get all the stories. And I promise you that book will not disappoint. It might not be royal. It is going to be a cut above some of the things we've been discussing. You think this book is crazy? Okay, you just wait. You just wait to see the way this kid's life was with Hunter S. Thompson at the helm. Okay, but back to our book, Revenge, the Wedding. Oh, you guys. Okay, so he starts it out this way. The fairy tale a rich prince weds a beautiful damsel in an imposing castle surrounded by 600 excited guests and then departs in a horse-drawn carriage to the ecstatic cheers of thousands of adoring citizens was perfectly choreographed by the Windsors. Hollywood could not have rivaled its authenticity. But few Kensington Palace staff approached that day without bruises and a tinge of disbelief about Meghan and Harry. And the family was really divided about this entire event. Now, Charles and the Queen felt like, thank God Harry's found somebody. And she seems like she's okay with being part of the royal family. And she seems like she's down for being a public person and she's not running from that. Because as we recall, many of Harry's girlfriends had been really put off by having to be in the public and having to be followed and having to be watched and having to be photographed. And they ran for the hills. I think they ran for the hills because of who they were dating. But it was really easy to say it's because of all of the media and the media circus. And they didn't like it. But I think we can all agree that Cressida probably had her own fair share of attention. Wasn't she like a model? And she came from a pretty well-known family, so it's not like she was a complete nobody. But regardless, they all wanted to say, Harry's had such a hard time finding someone because, he's just so famous. And here's somebody who is willing to be famous with him. But William and Kate had completely different feelings about it, and they were very skeptical of the success of this marriage and this wedding, and skeptical of the success of bringing in a woman in her late 30s who had been her own person and hadn't had to obey any orders of any kind and had gone through the world manipulating and playing games. However, whatever the rules were, she knew a cheat code to it. And so they were just like, ooh, but our whole life is run by rules and you cannot cheat your way through this one. So how is she really going to do? And as I was reading it, I thought to myself, I wonder if the older generation's approval of Meghan and the younger generation's disapproval of Meghan is based on the fact that there is such a generational divide in how people present themselves solely based on social media. So like the older generation may not have realized how diabolical some of these influencers can be because it's all based on, let me make much of myself. I will do anything at any cost to progress my storyline and make, increase my followers. If that means I've got to call up folks and like beg to be allowed to stay in their hotel so that I can, stay in this lavish place. And then I'll say that, all my followers will get, will learn about the hotel. If you'll give me a free stay, I'll promote your hotel. Let me get free clothes. Let me do this. Like this real low class behavior to continue to progress themselves in the world and put up this shiny picture of perfection. William and Kate, I think, may have been more aware of that narcissistic influencer culture and spotted it immediately in Meghan. Whereas I think that the king and the queen, or I think that Charles and the Queen may not have realized what kind of personality they were working with. I'm not saying that they were stupid or that they were naive in any way, but it's like a whole new strand of personality mess that is shaping and molding our community and destroying the things that are good and beautiful because of this nasty low-class influencer thing that is like ruining everything. And this is a complete and total sidebar, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think it fits. I was listening to Megyn Kelly the other day, and she was talking about how the Met Gala used to be an event to go to. It used to be A-list celebrities, beautiful clothes, a lovely evening at a beautiful institution for a worthy cause, right? You had to pay a lot of money to go. Now it's full of people who you've never heard of. Like she was saying that she had been to this event once when it was fabulous, and then more recently when it was not fabulous. And she's like in the bathroom, and there's all the influencers like taking selfies, and they've got their like cell phones out, and they're like, walking around like making TikToks and stuff. It's a bunch of TikTok stars you've never heard of, a bunch of influencers you'd never know. They're smoking in the bathroom. They're acting like just like a bunch of trash has just showed up and acting in their trashy ways. And it's just degrading everything that used to be wonderful. And I feel like Meghan Markle is very much part of this new influencer, trashy. I mean, she wasn't on TikTok, but you know what I'm talking about? Like these non-celebrities that are in our face all the time. Just, they don't have any reason to be there. They've got no skills. They've got nothing. It's just, they know how to make like 30-second clip videos, and we're all addicted to it. And so we know their face, but we really, like, for what? There's no acting skills. There's no artistry. There's no beauty skill, nothing, no reason. And yet we're constantly fed this diet of reality TV stars and these low level, no skill low-class individuals who are not really all that they are presenting to be. They just have a ton of handouts and they know. Anyway, that's a tangent. But I think William and Catherine would have been a lot more apprised of that part of society than maybe the king and maybe the queen and Charles were. And so we're able to call out what they saw in a way that the older generation just maybe wasn't aware. Okay, that was a long aside. Let's keep going. Now, like most families, on the eve of a wedding, okay, whatever your beef may be, the wedding's here, okay? The train ain't stopping now, so you might as well just enjoy the ride. So they've let things go. Tom Bauer says that weddings symbolize the union of two families and their friends, and though that is what you would typically find, this guest list defied that convention. It reflected Harry's deliberate detachment from his past. Now, let us ask ourselves, why did he have to detach from his background? Why was that a prerequisite to his success with Meghan? Obviously, she didn't like any of his friends. We've covered that multiple times. And she didn't like the culture of the upper class. And she let Harry know that his friends were unacceptable to her. And if he was going to stay in a relationship with her, then he was going to have to ditch some of that British upper class culture that he had grown up in. And as a middle finger to all that, he said, okay, you're not coming to my wedding. And he made it really clear, I have new alliances now. And it was extremely hurtful to people who'd always been in his life. Several members of the royal family, cousins, uncles, and aunts, were surprised not to be invited. That's shocking to me. How could you exclude your actual family? It'd be one thing to exclude, friends that she didn't like. Even that I think is a complete and total overstep. These are his friends. They should come to his wedding. He's in his mid-30s. He's finally getting married. This is a big celebration. This is not like wedding number 2 for him. He should have been able to celebrate with as many people as he could get packed into that chapel, It's a huge event for him. But no, she curated his side of the guest list too. Not just hers, but his also. Now, politicians were excluded, among them the Prime Minister and Donald Trump. Although scorned, he refused to criticize Meghan in a TV interview with Piers Morgan about Meghan's criticism of his misogyny. Well, I still hope they're happy, Trump said with unusual tact. But across the shires, many who had helped Harry through his early years taught him to play polo, provided hospitality, taken him on safaris to Africa, and cared for him in the years after Diana's death, could not understand why they had been excluded. That is unbelievable to me. All these people who had stood in the gap for him as he suffered through the loss of his mother. And Sperry acts like nobody did anything for him. Please, all of these families gathered and rallied around him to support him in his grief. And for him to now act like they didn't deserve to come to his wedding. And you guys also. What do you remember when we read Spare and that surrogate mother and father he had in Africa? He'd pick them up. He'd run into them somehow, and they were filmmakers in Africa. And he would go down there and tell her all of his problems, his surrogate mom. And he'd run down there every time there was a problem, and he would literally lay with his head in her lap as she stroked his hair, and he'd tell all the problems that he'd ever had. It seems like those people should have been invited to the wedding. Nope. They didn't get invited. It's weird that he makes so much of them in Spare, yet couldn't offer to extend them an invitation. Well, it got to be so pervasive amongst his community of people who had not been invited that they had an acronym. NFI, not fucking invited. Individually, none could understand the snub until they came to a common conclusion. All were deemed to be of no use to Harry in the future. The guest list, strongly influenced by Meghan, ignored nostalgia and gratitude. The focus was completely and solely on their reinvention. So, lest we ever have any doubts that Meghan had planned to leave, from day one, let us put those doubts aside. This guest list shows that she was trying to make much of her return to Hollywood. There's no other reason to invite all of these people. Half of these people, of no importance to her current life. It was just in an effort to dig in and make sure she hadn't lost her place in Hollywood so she could run right back to that when she needed it. And she was planning on needing it. Now, of course, the most notable exclusion from Meghan's side of the guest list was her own dad. and just like her own family. There was nobody from her family who came to this. Voicing the Queen's surprise, Charles was perplexed that besides Doria, not a single relative had been invited. How did Meghan think she was going to get away with this and nobody was going to think, ding, 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 that's weird. That's not normal. No one is going to think that this makes any sense or that you've got a valid excuse for not inviting people. It's going to look weird. It's going to detract from the day. It makes you look like you are some kind of scammer and schemer who can't let people from your past around lest they reveal all of your secrets, which is exactly what Samantha thought. But Meghan said Mike Markle, her 80-year-old uncle, has climbed socially and left us behind. And I think that's what happens when you're the underclass trying to rise above the reality of your situation. Listen to the wisdom of the ages speak. Yes, that's exactly what's happening here. She is trying to rise above the reality of her situation. The reality of her situation is that the people that she came from are very normal, regular, lower middle class Americans. And I think that there is absolutely zero shame in coming from a group of people that aren't the royal family. Who of us, very few of us are running with the upper echelons of British society. There's no shame in that. And I think that if Meghan had chosen to show graciousness and kindness to her family, they probably would have acted out in less crazy ways, I think. I mean, I think that when she snubbed them, it kind of revealed maybe the rougher edges of their personality because they just wanted to be heard. And so they were going to claw and attack and, strike first. And I think that had Meghan just been a decent human being and been gracious, even if they weren't visually perfect, or even if she wishes that they maybe didn't have so many bankruptcies and, prison sentences in their past. I mean, it just seems like, I think the Markles were a little bit embarrassing to some degree. I'm not going to lie. Some of the things that they did, Tom Jr. did put a gun to his ex-wife's head. That is embarrassing behavior. And it would have been embarrassing to have family members that seemed like everything was always an issue. But she could have still... The whole world knew this was true about her family. But if she had still held her head up and thought, no, I'm going to be the bigger person. You don't have to invite every single person in the family. You could have left out Tyler and Dooley. All right. They don't know you. But what about just inviting just the core groups of your family? The people that you grew up with. Your uncles who would arrange things for you so that you could continue to build your resume. Your dad, your mom, your half-brother and sister, and your uncles, and you're on both sides. No one is asking you to bring forward every single person you've ever met, but don't look like a weirdo with no family. All right. Well, the Queen thought this was really weird, and doesn't matter what she thought. Nobody was going to listen to her, and all of Meghan's family was left to the wayside, except for Doria. Her uncle, Mike Markle, said that Meghan was a prima donna because Thomas had treated her really well, and now she thought that the whole world should bend over backwards for her because she'd never learned the word no. Of course, Samantha Markle weighed in, and she said that she believed her half-sister had excluded all the relatives to protect the lies that she had told Harry and others about her life, which I can only imagine is true because in any kind of casual conversation, it could have just, all manner of things could have been revealed, not purposely trying to betray Meghan, but just, they don't know what she has or hasn't told Harry. She tells every single guy that she's with that she didn't have a good childhood and that she had grown up really poor and she had family that didn't really care about her and that he was going to be the family she'd never had. So even on a very fundamental level, she's completely changing the story of her childhood. If she's going to tell a whopper like that and completely erase everything that her parents had fought and worked so hard for her so that she could have a really nice childhood where she was very well provided for. If she's going to take an eraser to all of that, you can imagine that there's all kinds of other things that she's not only tried to erase, but added to her childhood. In their place, in the place of a real family, Meghan had invited her girlfriends and admirers. You guys, this guest list is so cold and uninteresting and just so bland and lacking any kind of nostalgia or joy. Or it's like, why would you invite these people to celebrate with you? Who are these people? Okay, so she'd invited her girlfriends and her admirers, including John Fitzpatrick, her close friend from New York. John Fitzpatrick, who you guys, we all know, we all raise our eyebrows to that. He was escorting her around town. That's what that whole situation was. So for her to, I mean, I think that this is a very interesting term. Her admirers, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? And I think that, South Park got it right when he included all those hockey players in the congregation. Okay, so she had these admirers there, and God make it make sense, why she would invite John Fitzpatrick to her wedding day. Okay, that's weird. Less noticeable, but more important, were those engaged to maintain her Hollywood profile. Her Los Angeles agents, lawyers, and publicity advisors. Kaylee Thomas Morgan of Sunshine Sachs had a prime seat in the chapel, and behind them sat her fellow actors from Suits. Many had not been expecting an invitation. They all stayed together in this one hotel, and they all compared notes on the fact that none of them had been invited to the dinner that evening. I think that's really weird to invite people to your wedding, but then be like, you don't get to come to the actual party. You can just sit there through the really boring part that nobody cares about. I mean, that's just rude. I would never invite people and then be like, but not to the reception though, I'm not going to go that far. You might talk to people. So she let them come, but only when they couldn't talk to anybody. And it's interesting that she would invite anybody from Suits because, I mean, what even is Suits compared to what she is now? But it's the last real work she had in that world. So she's got to maintain whatever ties she can there in case they might be able to help her later. Now, Tom Bower is very fair in the sense that he reminds us embracing celebrities was not unusual for the Windsors, okay? I mean, they are famous themselves, so they're going to have some famous friends. And Charles had many times invited actors and writers for weekend parties in Sandringham. So it isn't like, oh, shock and awe, you've invited celebrities here. Nobody does that. It's always, it's just Ma and Pa and a couple of cousins, Nobody's saying it has to be like that. But it's weird that there was nobody meaningful at the wedding on Meghan's side of the aisle. Tom Bower even reminds us that Kate and William did include the head of Audi UK to their wedding in thanks for supplying his cars on generous terms. So to invite somebody to the wedding as a thank you for their business dealings wasn't, out of the realm of appropriate. But like I said, it's just the level of celebrity, and there was no reason why Meghan or Harry should invite these people because they were not close. Why is Meghan's family getting booted out so that George Clooney can take a seat? Among the stardust to seal the glamour of Harry and Meghan's wedding were David and Victoria Beckham, James Corden, who would want that guy, Elton John, Serena Williams, and George and Amal Clooney. And no one even believed that Meghan knew the Clooneys, but the palace insisted that one time Harry had met the actor. Okay, but you met an actor one time and then you're like, you want to come to my wedding? That's so dumb and lame and so begging for attention. You'd kick your family out so that you can include an actor you don't know. And guys, George Clooney's grifter behavior surprised me. Okay, you just wait till you get to... I gotta tell you, I have never had in my life a desire to join Hollywood or, LA and all that crazy has never allured me. It just seemed like a crazy lifestyle full of shallow people. And I mean, I'm sure that there are some thinkers and some doers and, some really interesting, lovely people. Of course there are. But I've never been allured by that. Having read how much manipulation goes behind the scenes and how much I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine and networking and how much false, just how gilded everything is and how falsely beautiful it is and how every diamond is really a piece of plastic. I just feel grossed out by that industry on a whole nother level. And I thought that I had them firmly placed in my mind with, distrusting them and just feeling like, is this really an atmosphere that is conducive to human flourishing? But having sort of the veil pulled back on what I already knew was just kind of a scammy, weird environment, I never want, I mean, it's not a threat. No one's inviting me to Hollywood. Say like one day I was invited, I would just be like, no, thank you. I will not. I don't want to have anything to do with you people. It's so fake. It's so fake. Okay, so we'll get to why I think George Clooney is just gross. Okay, anyway, among this surprising guest list, Oprah Winfrey managed to get an invite, and she's described this way in Bauer's book. Renowned for turning wounds into wisdom as the television queen of victimhood, Oprah Winfrey was an enormous surprise because she certainly wasn't Meghan's friend. They had met for the first and only time 2 months earlier. Okay, can you imagine you have a very limited amount of people who can come to this wedding? It's 600 people are at this wedding, okay? That's not very many people when you consider how famous the royal family is. So 600 people are invited to this wedding. And you waste an invitation on somebody that you met 2 months ago one time. Who in your life would you... And like, that's weird. If somebody invited me to their wedding and we had met one time 2 months ago, and it was like a big wedding, I would be like, what? But why though? Like, do you not have any real people to invite that you would ask me to come? Why am I getting an invite? You don't know me. And of course, I mean, it's so obvious why she did. I mean, again, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. Oprah saw it as an opportunity, so did Meghan. It's just networking, but why use your special day to just network and make it all about, like, your exterior life? Like, isn't your wedding supposed to be a celebration of intimacy and joy between the two of you, not like, how can I make this a business opportunity for me? And later on, when we talk about her speech that she gave at the dinner, Meghan, do you realize this isn't a platform? This is your wedding day? Okay, well, both of them were just using each other for a later date. We know that she was cultivating this relationship so that she could make much of it later on when she decided to betray everybody. Now, it was very unusual that people were finding out about who the guests were on the day of the wedding, because usually the palace will publish the guest list. They've got no problem telling you who's coming. But this time, Meghan had vetoed that and vetoed it vehemently. Well, of course she did. She didn't want people speculating about how weird it was that nobody in her family was coming and that the only people coming were business lawyers and people from Sunshine Sachs and her old friends from Suits and a couple of people who could continue to help her, and then a bunch of celebrities she had no business inviting. Of course she wanted to keep that under wraps. So for the longest, people had been playing, guess who's going to the wedding by keeping eyes on social media. And a lot of people couldn't wait to advertise that they'd been invited, posting all sorts of things about what they were going to wear, what hotels they were going to stay at, what their journey like to St. George's Chapel was going to be like. I mean, it was all just everyone with their cell phones out. Just a really clunky, common sort of, this is the world we live in wedding event. Now, the exuberance for this wedding was high. Tens of thousands of people had come to line the streets outside of the chapel. And it's interesting to note the numbers when it comes to who was watching this. Now, in England, the numbers were 10 million for this particular wedding. For Kate's wedding, it had been 17.6 million, and Diana had gotten a whopping 28 million to watch her wedding. So it must have stung that she had the lowest number of viewers. Now, I don't think that includes American numbers. That's just in the UK. Because Bauer says, though she only got 10 million and it must have stung, she could, however, be sure that many uncounted millions were watching in America and elsewhere. Now, what was Thomas Markle doing? Well, this wedding is going on. This wedding that he was supposed to attend, but then had a heart attack and no longer could. Lying on a hotel bed to avoid prying journalists, Thomas Markle grumbled that he knew more of the Hollywood guests in the first 2 rows than his daughter did. Interestingly, he had filmed with them all, including George Clooney, in the sitcom Friends for Life. And that was one of several reasons he came to believe why Meghan had abandoned him in the months before the wedding. I mean, he would have been upstaging her as far as the conversations he would have been able to have with her guests who she didn't even know. He would have had all kinds of, hey, remember when we did this? Oh, that was really funny when blank happened. It's like, how horrifying that she couldn't even talk to her guests, but that her fat, frumpy dad could. Of course she was going to exclude him. Thomas had come to the conclusion that she never really wanted me there. And he felt that Doria was probably relieved about his absence as well. Speaking of Doria, there she was wearing the clothes and with the demeanor that Meghan had suggested and sitting alone. Meghan hadn't even allowed her mother to bring a guest with her. Like, where was Doria's +1? People assumed Doria had just wanted to come by herself, but that isn't the case. Meghan had said, you can come, but only you. Don't bring anybody. And that looked weird too. Why is her mom sitting by herself? Are these people just islands unto themselves? Meghan floating off somewhere, her mother floating off somewhere. Oh, they bumped into each other. Oh, I guess you can come, Mom. It's like, why don't these people have any real friends? Why are these people so isolated? Everyone assumed that coming alone had been Doria's choice rather than Meghan's. Below Doria sat Kate and Camilla. Kate was inscrutable. Choosing to wear a traditional Alexander McQueen tailored coat she had worn on a previous engagement, she signaled that Meghan should grasp that they were not rivals. Unlike Meghan, Kate would eventually become the queen. And that's really interesting. I think what Tom Bower means by this, and you guys tell me if you think that I'm right or if I'm just misreading that passage. Kate didn't have to go and become dressed, to the nines in something that no one had ever seen her in and try to upstage the event by, oh, what is she going to wear, and then everybody's talking about how she looks instead of the bride. Like, Catherine knew that she could come in something she'd actually worn somewhere else, and that was completely fine. She wasn't in a rivalry with Meghan. She didn't need to show up and try to take away attention from Meghan. Now, we know that Meghan, had the tables been turned, she would have tried to show up looking, not just beautiful, but she would have tried to come looking sexy, so eyes would have been on her rather than on Catherine. Oh, goodness. I wish that we all had the class and grace and dignity that Catherine has. Now, it's interesting to note that William and Harry, who were dressed in blues and royals, gave the firm impression of deep friendship and mutual support. And I do remember that. I remember thinking that they looked really happy and excited about the day, and they seemed very close. So I wouldn't have known at the time that there was any bad blood. Now, the Queen arrives 5 minutes before the ceremony starts. Philip walked with her unaided. He was 96 years old, you guys. He just had hip surgery, and he had a cracked rib. I mean, that man is made of steel. It's very interesting that they are seated, and the visual was this. The royal family sat on one side, facing Hollywood on the other. What a stunning visual that was. Because that is the reality of the situation. It's the royal family facing Hollywood, like a face-off. It's like an ancient battle where the two people come out on the fighting field and line up against each other. Now, as far as the service goes, they were looking at this as a great opportunity to show their desire for a multi-ethnic, multiracial embracing from the royal family to all the Commonwealth, to all of the ethnicities that are now part of the fabric of London and beyond. And they saw this as a time to celebrate all that multiculturalism. So Charles and the Archbishop of Canterbury, both of them had worked on this wedding ceremony together, and they had fashioned a celebration that would show Charles' strong relationship with Britain's Afro-Caribbean community. And the invitation to the Afro-American Episcopalian Bishop Michael Curry of Chicago to read a sermon, and the inclusion of a performance by the 19-year-old cellist Sheku Kana Mason, sent a message across the world that the British royal family sincerely embraced multiculturalism. They had a very concerted effort to embrace Meghan's black roots, I guess, and to show that they didn't need to have this high church wedding in order for her to be part of their family. They had a gospel choir there. Okay, this is why I think that people felt like it was a sham watching it. Because there was somebody in the comments the other day who said that they'd started watching it and then they just kind of couldn't finish it because it just was boring and dumb. And I agreed that when I didn't finish watching it either, because I remember thinking something feels off about this. And I think the thing that felt off about it was it felt like it was a representation of a person who had never existed. I didn't know a lot about Meghan then. Now I feel like I know way too much about this girl. But at the time I didn't. But everything that I had known about her thus far, it didn't seem like nothing I'd ever seen of her would show that she would have picked out a wedding with this Episcopalian minister. She wasn't Episcopalian. She was an Afro-American Episcopalian. She had gone to a Catholic high school. It seemed like her experience with religion had been more like progressive Christianity and Catholicism mixed together. So it didn't, I mean, who was this Michael Curry that he had been invited? That seemed like just like, let's pick a black guy from America who preaches and we kind of know who he is. The gospel choir felt like it was an homage to her American culture, but it didn't necessarily seem like that was something that she probably didn't go home and listen to gospel records. You know what I mean? And then, I don't know, it just was like we have to get people who reflect her blackness, but nothing of her own life reflected that blackness. Like, just felt like it was a false version of reality. And we were all supposed to be like, you know, oh, this is so great, even though it didn't jive with the reality that we knew. This is not the person that she was. It was a beautiful ceremony that was put together, but I feel like it was sort of, the racial thing was forced, I think, a little bit. And it just didn't seem like it totally reflected who Meghan was. But now, this is so interesting. And I so wish that Tom Bower had given us a little bit more information on this. Okay, at the precise moment set out on the timetable, Meghan arrived at the chapel in a Rolls Royce. The same vehicle that had carried Wallis Simpson, the American divorcee, and the Duke of Windsor's wife to her husband's funeral in 1972. The officials had deliberately set out to give her this vehicle to travel in. More snubbing to Meghan. Everyone was trying to get away with whatever they could to show her that we don't like you. Nobody felt like they were able to openly tell Meghan we don't like you. So at every opportunity, whenever an official could do something that would show you drive us crazy and we don't like you, they did. And when she stepped out of that limousine, the train on her dress got stuck. And the escorting officer who opened the door offered zero help. Fix it yourself. You're this strong feminist. Fix your own dress. The explanation foreshadowed what was to come. Because after her rudeness during the rehearsal the previous day, explained the officer, no one had any feelings of goodwill towards the bride. You guys, I'm telling you, Meghan had made herself a pariah amongst the entire palace staff. Down to the guy driving the car, he wanted to have nothing to do with her. Fix your own dress, I'm not helping you. I wish we had gotten a whole chapter on what the previous rehearsal day had been like. That's the chapter that's missing from this book. So there she comes. She walks down the aisle. She walked halfway by herself. Then Charles met her and walked her up the rest. Of course, she was touted for being this feminist because she had dared to walk down an aisle by herself. Is this the world we live in where that is considered feminism, to walk down an aisle on your own? Like, that's all it takes? What a feminist. She walked down that aisle unaided. Okay. Well, she had to because she'd driven everyone else away, so she had to get her father-in-law to give her away when he had exactly zero ability to do that. So, okay. They get to the, he gets to the altar, you know, there they are, making eyes at each other, whispering their little words. Now, Tom Bower has feelings about what he felt was just a racial performance the entire wedding. He says Bishop Curry had been asked to speak for 6 minutes, but then, in Tom Bower's words, in a barnstorming, unscripted 14-minute sermon, his exuberant appeals for the power in love, followed by a gospel choir singing Stand By Me. And some of the people in the audience didn't quite know how to react to the performance. It aroused smiles among some and exasperation among others. It's just a clash of cultures. It just wasn't what they're used to at St. George's Chapel. What I think about that is, okay, well, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing to try something new, you know? And I think that it would have been a really beautiful and powerful thing if any of this had been true to who Meghan was. I think it would have been a really gorgeous ceremony if they had brought in other cultures' expression of love for Christ and love for God. And if they had shown the beauty and the diversity that is within the Christian church. That's awesome. And it would have been beautiful if they'd done that. I think the reason that there was some exasperation and sort of bemused smiles is because people in that audience knew that it wasn't true to who Meghan was. What is this power and love and all this talk and stand by me and all this? It's just felt like more Meghan Markle performing. Not that the people who were doing the performing were fakes, but it just felt like more of her circus to hide who she really was, and more of these platitudes and false words of assurance about the beauty and the mercy and the love. But it's like, yeah, but you don't ascribe to any of these things. So it's just annoying having this huge, big, over-the-top performance that extends past, doubles almost the time allotted. Because it just feels like more of the sham, more of the con is happening. I don't think people were like being racist in the fact that they were bemused by it. I think it felt fake. Again, not by the performers themselves, but by Meghan accepting this as an extension of her personality. Anyway, doubts disappeared at the end of the service as Charles thoughtfully took the arm of uncertain Doria and escorted her out of the chapel. What a gentleman. What an absolute gentleman to do that. As Harry and Meghan emerged into the sunlight, the wedding was hailed as a triumph. A magically modern royal wedding was the Daily Mail's front page headline, echoing the resounding public acclaim. Universally, the ceremony was hailed as a perfect example of the monarch's deft modernization. No one doubted that the couple would be a benefit to the country and enhance the royal family. The monarchy's hope in William and Kate, a solid, loving modern family, and now Meghan and Harry, symbolizing Britain's confident entry into the 21st century. It could have been lovely. It could have been, people wanted it to be the beautiful picture that it seemed like it was. People celebrated, and journalists and authors were only too eager to celebrate the potential new horizon that they were rising up to meet. One author, Tony Parsons, witnessed for The Sun the optimism among the crowds in Windsor. Standing on a packed pavement to watch Harry and Meghan pass by in an open Ascot Landau carriage, he recorded that the deep, bitter divisions inflicted on Britain by the EU referendum of 2016 seemed to have melted away. He wrote, "Here was a wedding to give us all reasons to be cheerful, and the joy was everywhere. Here was a royal wedding for the multiracial, multicultural country the UK has become." It seemed like a really great thing. And it should have been a really great thing. If Harry had united himself with a genuine person, it would have been. But unfortunately, he is marrying an operator, somebody who only cares about how to progress her own narrative. And she is so exceedingly narcissistic that there was no hope that this could ever be for anybody else's good except her own. Now, 200 of those guests of the 600 were greeted by Charles at the evening dinner in a glass marquee on the grounds of Frogmore House. That's quite a pared down guest list who got to come to the after party. Uninvited, shockingly, were Camilla's two children, Tom and Laura Parker Bowles. Who was making the slashing cuts here? Well, obviously Meghan. But who allowed this? Like, how are you going to come into somebody's family and then blatantly exclude key members of that family? This isn't like somebody's second cousin's mother's friend can't come. This is really unacceptable. By the way, a lot of Harry's oldest friends, including Tom Inskip, was also uninvited to this little event. I guess I shouldn't say uninvited because who even knows if he was invited in the first place, but he wasn't invited to the dinner. Meghan has changed Harry too much, Inskip later said, shocked that he had been dumped, and we've lost him. Y'all! Inskip was one of Harry's dear friends from childhood. They'd always been friends. And now, suddenly, because Meghan doesn't like him, and Meghan has known Harry for like literally, 2 seconds? Now, suddenly, he can't be friends with Tom Skippy Inskip anymore? What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you what's going on here. Harry had switched his allegiances to the Hollywood set. Why would he do that? These people don't mean anything to him. He hasn't known any of these people. Were any of these people there for him when his mom died? Were any of these people standing in the gap between him and the grief that was threatening to undo him at every moment after his mother's passing? No. And yet he can throw every single one of them to the curb and open his arms wide for stupid Oprah Winfrey and Idris Elba and James Corden and George Clooney. Excuse me, why are these people here? Why would you invite people you don't know just because they're famous? That is like the height of pathetic behavior. I want the cool kids to come. You don't know the cool kids. And quite frankly, thank God, you should thank God on your knees you don't. That doesn't sound like a crowd of well-established, mentally fit individuals. If there was a crowd of people who I would run to the hills from, it would be the Hollywood set. I'm talking to you about people who seem more confused than anybody in the entire planet. It would be the people in Hollywood. Their priorities are so jacked up. And now look here, look how Harry's acting now that he's getting even close to it. He's not even reigning and ruling in Hollywood. And yet, just by being in their proximity, he's acting like a crazy person. So here he's invited all these people nobody even knows. Okay, but this is where I want to talk to you about how George Clooney, I think, is he's functioning like the people that he's around. And this is the problem. They don't know that the way they act is crazy and cringy. This is how they all act. So they've agreed that this is appropriate and not embarrassing at all. You guys, I'm here to tell you this is embarrassing behavior. The actor brazenly seized the moment for self-promotion. So, okay, as it turned out, Princess Eugenie's future husband, Jack Brooksbank, a bar manager promoted to brand ambassador for George Clooney's tequila Casamigos, was assigned to pour Clooney's brand for guests throughout the evening. So everybody's just moving and shaking over here at the wedding. This isn't a union of two people. It is a way for people to network. That's exactly what this was. This was a party for networking. So George Clooney's over there making deals with Eugenie's future husband, Jack Brooksbank, who is his brand ambassador, to serve that tequila at the wedding. Now, Harry in spare hadn't known much about tequila until he went to a party in Hollywood. At some point, for whatever reason, he was hanging out in Hollywood for for long bits of time. And it wasn't when he knew Meghan. And he's like crashing at various people's house, including Courtney Cox's house. And I think it was at her house that somebody introduced him to good tequila. And then he acted like it was like that to be an American was to drink tequila. That gone were the days of a gin and tonic. Now he was a tequila man. So I guess that's why he decided to serve it at his wedding. And there's George Clooney taking an opportunity to further his brand. What a grossness we live in. Everybody in their dumb brand. Well, Charles gets up and has a speech. He says, "My darling old Harry, I'm so happy for you." He called Harry a big man with a big heart and said he was glad he'd found his perfect wife. You must not think much of your son if a perfect wife for him is Meghan Markle, but okay. Then Meghan got up to do her speech. And again, as I alluded to before, she's looking at this as an opportunity to make much of her own brand. She gets up with her dumb little sentimental speech that is full of the platitudes we know her so well to say. But Tom Bowers says that though it was sentimental, it was also a little threatening. She said meeting Harry was love at first sight and that she'd found her prince. Yeah, you literally found a prince. Wow, look at that. I mean, at last I found my prince. It's less of a line to say when he is a literal prince. Because it sounds like she was just beating the pavement until she found an actual prince. It's one thing if you say that, but he's not an actual prince. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, I found my prince. It's not, I don't know if I can't seem to articulate what I mean, but I find that to be a meaningless line when he literally is one. After thanking the royal family for their welcome, she pledged to launch campaigns. "That's why I'm here," she said to applause. "Bring it on!" shouted the American guests. Oh gosh, who invited them? I just think that this is so gross, but such an obvious statement of who she planned on being. And not that they didn't already see it, but if anybody left that wedding feeling like this was a celebration of love, familial bond, intimacy, and the expectations of a life well lived together, all of that would have been shattered instantly. By then, just 2 hours after the wedding, the royal family's official site had added the Duchess of Sussex new webpage. Meghan's pride, the page proclaimed, was being a woman and a feminist and an activist on behalf of women, girls, and the poor since the age of 11. And then they had a photo of her learning mission to India, and the website mentioned her interest in the stigmatization of menstrual health management. Blah, 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 blah. All the causes that she hasn't cared about. Not one whit did she care about it while she was doing it, but now she certainly can't be bothered. Now, some of the older guests, thank God for the wisdom of the ages, were wondering whether Meghan imagined herself to be the British equivalent of Michelle Obama. Gazing at the Californians who cheered Meghan's pledge to campaign, they were irked that their full white teeth smiles revealed an awfully self-adoring crowd. Self-adoring, yes, absolutely. That's the word for these people. Very, very much so are they self-adoring. And they love to clap each other on the back only so the other person will turn around and be like, no, you're the best. No, you're the best. No, you're the best. Well, of course, William gets up and gives his speech. He's tactful about it. And he says it's the best thing that has happened to Has. Well, imagine what a terrible life he's had if Meghan's the best. As Brooks Bank handed out Clooney's tequila brand, James Corden hosted a dancing competition. Of course he did. What is he trying to... I mean, it's like, where are the cameras? Is he filming his own show right now? Of course James Corden would go out there and be like, let's have a dance competition! Charles danced with his sons and waited for the fireworks. So guys, listen to this. Impressed by the display, Charles asked Harry who had paid. You, Pa, replied his son. Charles left the party early, uncertain how much of the £32 million bill was down to him. Regardless of this latest burden, he had hosted a memorable celebration on a special day. Can you imagine if your child turned to you and was like, it's all on you, Dad, and it's gonna cost you a whopping £32 million? Like, I would have left the party so I could go throw up. Now, this is the reaction to the wedding speech. 3 days later, Meghan's wedding pledge to campaign was highlighted by the Times. Her legions of admirers commented, the newspaper, seeing her a princess, not a preacher. Even the cheerleaders for her feminism, suggested the newspaper, hoped she understood the fine line to tread in public. The newspaper continued, clearly she has no intention of giving up her activism, and yet it carries clear risks. Activism strays easily into politics, and it is an iron law of the constitutional monarchy, of which she is now a part, that its members stay out of politics if they want it to survive. The warning was explicit. In her new role, she is a princess, not a politician, and she will have to find a way to be content with that. Duchesses don't campaign, and they don't fight back. So even the papers who would have celebrated her desire to be a breath of fresh air, and who wanted the image of new, but not necessarily a new behavior, but at least a new visual, were concerned about this proclamation that she was going to start new campaigns. She, again, is not a politician. And I find it wild that you would use your wedding day to give your speech and to pivot suddenly from your love for your husband to, and I'm here to start new campaigns. It was a proclamation that, and I've used this prince that I found so that I can make much of myself. I'm not marrying him. I'm marrying this new level of fame, fortune, and global familiarity. Harry should have been super offended that she did that, because she couldn't even stop herself from celebrating the fact that she had now reached the pinnacle of her personal success at his cost. The measured caution did not appeal to everyone. Tom Bradley, a TV journalist known for his friendship with William and Harry, foresaw problems if the palace officials did not endorse Meghan's demands. Writing in the Sunday Times, apparently on the Sussexes' behalf and aware of the tensions between Meghan and her staff, Bradley applauded Meghan, who has yet to put a foot wrong in public. Yeah, in public, but what does it matter if you can be perfect in public? Because eventually the poison will seep out. You can only be so beautiful on the outside for so long when you're rotting on the inside. And so this whole public persona that she's created might be beautiful on the outside. It's rotting from within. And nobody who is standing there working for her, whose fingers are bleeding from all the work they've done, whose nose has been worn off from the grindstone, is going to stand there and go, oh yeah, she's never put a foot wrong in public. Well, you just wait. You just wait, because all of these people who are being, horse whipped into submission are eventually going to come out and be like, enough. Or Meghan is going to just step in it. She does. This is the thing. this heightened level of narcissism, hatefulness, divisive personality, and just general unkindness it will bear fruit. It will. There is natural law set in place that when people act a certain way, certain things will happen. It is without exception. You cannot go through life being a fake, being a liar, being a horrible person, being unkind, being mean and cruel, and think that you are going to live your entire life as a success and meet the grave, and no one's ever going to be any of the wiser. Well, he hailed her mixed race background as a PR department's dream to refresh the royal brand. This is what I'm saying. All anybody could do when they praised her was to talk about the color of her skin. But other than just the generalizations of she's an activist, she's a feminist. Okay, but how? How is she an activist? How is she a feminist? How has she used her platform thus far to do and to continue to do things that would regress causes that she says are important? This is the vast difference between her and Princess Diana. Princess Diana had 3 main causes. She was very open and honest about bulimia and eating disorders. She was very caring, and she was on the front lines of care for AIDS. She cared about landmines and the dismantling of landmines to save human beings' lives from, ambling into these devastating environments. And she was consistent about those things, and in private was consistent about them. Not just, I'll do it when there's a camera on me. It was, I'll go secretly into these children's hospitals and sit with the kids when no one knows I'm here. She cared about those things in very real way. Did she benefit from that in public? Yes, she did. And did she know she benefited from it? I'm sure she did. But still, there was enough of her care and genuine empathy for people in their plight that it wasn't just for the cameras that she would do these things. And that is the complete difference between Meghan. Meghan, and this is the true of every narcissist out there, or any person who is wildly selfish. It doesn't matter if they can live with themselves if what they're doing is not true. People who are healthy inside can't live with themselves as the fake that they are. If they want to go out and pretend to be a thing, but they know that there is a reality that doesn't support the picture, people who are mentally and emotionally healthy, that really bothers them. And they don't take pride from success that they were not able to claim on real terms. A narcissist has no problem claiming success that has nothing to do with them or that they've stolen from somebody else. If they can manipulate the actions of somebody else and take that success for themselves, they feel that success is rightfully and genuinely theirs. And that's who Meghan is. She says she wants to be like Princess Diana, but what has she done that shows she really cares about the causes that she purports to care about? Anyway, at least she's mixed race. That is not a feather in anybody's cap. Harry's friend put the burden on the royal family and said that the Sussexes could be the family's natural rock stars, but it was going to be a complicated balancing act. And basically, the royal family needed to stop being so stuffy and just let Harry and Meghan be however they were going to be and accept that. Because they could be rock stars if only, the royal family didn't try to clip their wings. Please. Other writers were divided about the marriage. Margot Jefferson, the author of Negroland, elevated Meghan to the achievement-conscious black bourgeoisie. Harry, she believed, was fortunate to be, quote, marrying up to a woman with money and opinions. Well, I don't know if she's got money. I think that's kind of why she hooked up with Harry, thinking he was the one with some money. June Sarpong, the broadcaster, welcomed that the royals were beginning to resemble the rest of us. What do you mean? That they're now trashy just like the rest of us? What do you mean by that? Do you mean, now that they have some diversity in the color of their skin and so marginally that most of us didn't even know she was black? Is that what you mean? See, this is why I think that this is just an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to make such a big deal about the color of somebody's skin, because how does this, I've said this so many times, how does this add to value? Like, on an absolute foundational level, how does the color of somebody's skin add value to an institution? People's behavior, people's compassion, people's empathy, their heart, their work ethic, their desire for the greater good, their genuine desire for the greater good, the fact that their actions are their words are backed up by action. Like those are the things that are value added behaviors. The color of somebody's skin neither adds to nor takes away from an institution. And the fact that we've gotten to a point now where everybody is, not everybody, but there is a contingency of the population that wants to continue to say the balcony is too white. The balcony is too white. Okay, well, what if you got somebody with the darkest skin imaginable, but who'd hacked a couple of people to death? Does that add value to the balcony? Nobody is going. I mean, I understand what people are saying when they say we are a multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic community in England now. This is much more of a mixing pot than it was when the monarchy began. So why is it that we are never represented in this monarchy? Because if you're supposed to represent us, you sure don't look like us. If you want to say that the worth of the royal family is based on the color of their skin, you're just treading in some really dangerous waters. Because what if the royal family all disappears? What if the royal family, as we know them, all disappears, and in their place, another monarchy is set up, and they reflect the diversity that is in the streets? Will that make them more worthy of representation for Britain? To act like the institution of the monarchy, you either accept it or you don't accept it. But the visual on the balcony, like people who don't like the fact that, the balcony is all white, you just don't like the monarchy itself, though. I mean, these are the same people who are complaining all the time that it's the monarchy's terrible. Why do we even have it? Why do we have this old institution from like thousands of years ago? We need to, dismantle it. We don't need to have it. They waste our tax, all this junk. So why do you really care about what they look like? You just want to whine and complain because you don't like them anyway. You've already made that, enormously clear that you think that they have no place in the modern world. So you're telling me is that, but if their skin color looked different, then they could have a place? Do you hear how racist that is? You don't have a place in this world unless you're the right color skin, then I'll let you in. Like that's just fundamentally broken thinking. Okay, well, we've got to move on. But continuing on this same racial trend of, the royal family is the worst. They said that this person named Kehinde Andrews, a strident professor of Black Studies at Birmingham City University, was scathing. And this individual said, the royal family is perhaps the most identifiable symbol of whiteness in the world. It is absurd to think that one Black woman can transform an institution so rooted in colonialism and whiteness. What is this whiteness? I mean, I am super duper duper offended and grossed out by that blanket term. I mean, imagine the flip side of that statement. If somebody said, I can't stand this institution because of their Blackness, it's unacceptable. And I never thought I'd talk so much about race when I was talking about this book. I mean, I guess I should have realized I would be, but if I tell you that I can't stand something because of, if your problem, if you're coming at race from the idea that white people have always been, and by the way, this is all such erroneous thinking. But if I believe erroneously that white people are the reason that every other race has always had a boot on their neck, if this is the line I believe, and this is the lie I've been fed, and I'm holding it with all my heart, what sense does it make to then turn the tables and be the bully that I claim that the others were? To say, because you always had a boot on my neck, as soon as I get the upper hand, I'm going to smash your face. Then I am the same as the thing that I have criticized. So this is just some of the most broken, jacked up thinking I have ever encountered in all my life. It is so petty, and it's like preschool playground behavior. I perceive that this thing happened that I don't like, so I'm going to turn around and do that same thing that I don't like. How can you be a professor of anything if that is what a poor thinker you are? For Professor Andrews, Meghan was not Black enough. Oh gosh, this old thing. Her skin, he said on CNN, was too fair. Her hair was not afro, and her nose was not flat. She represents, he wrote, the image of Blackness that we have been sold as acceptable and marketable. Well, okay. Thanks for letting us know what a racist you are. That if a person doesn't have an afro and a flat nose and is, not the right tint of black, then they don't get to represent you. I mean, what is it that you're looking for? And see, that's the problem. There's this sliding scale of what is and is not acceptable to these kinds of thinkers. And I just think you have made a career based on being a whiny nightmare, because nothing you're saying really matters. And whatever you are given, the goalpost will move. You just want to complain. You want to be victimized. You know what I thought about the other day? I was reading some books to my kids, and the book that I was reading to them was like this old book from like maybe the 40s or 50s or something. It's this silly little book about this tugboat. The tugboat's called Little Toot. And he's this frivolous little tugboat. His whole family's a bunch of hard workers, but not him. He wants to sail around and be silly. And everybody despises him because it's like, we got real work to do, but you just want to be frivolous and silly. Finally, he sees one day his father and his grandfather pulling this huge ocean liner out to sea. And he sees them all working and being industrious. And he's by himself playing like he is every day. And he starts feeling like, I don't want to be frivolous and stupid anymore. Like, I want to join in with this community that I'm a part of. So anyway, it's like this whole story about how he like becomes a tugboat that actually does some work. Okay, it sounds like a silly story, but as I was reading it, I was really sad because I thought, I have not read a children's book like this in our current age. We don't read books about doing hard things. We don't read books about overcoming our own limitations, the ones that we set on ourselves because we just want everything to be easy all the time and we want it to be fun. And we don't read books about rising above that. We are now told everyone has to accept me because of my limitations. Everyone has to change their perspective because of what's easiest for me. Everyone needs to accept me based solely on my baseline behavior. Never when I'm excelling, never. It's just whatever I show up as, that needs to be celebrated. In a book that was written about a tugboat now for a child, it would be the tugboat was silly and annoying, but and never helped with any work. But then the tugboat showed everybody that it's okay to be silly and fun and just be you. That would be today's book. It wouldn't be let the tugboat see the work in the community that's going on and he needs to join in. And that is the same mentality I'm seeing here. We live in an era that is constantly trying to whine and complain and find a reason why just complaining is enough. It's like, why are we even having a conversation about the color of her skin? Why are we even having a conversation about whether she's dark enough or light enough or any of that? Why does any of that matter? But it all comes down to the fact that it's something to do other than rise above and do something meaningful with our time. This professor at this school, this is the best he can say. That these are the words he's invited on CNN, and this is what he says. Let's just whine and complain and act like everybody needs to continue to capitulate to my victimhood and be sorry for me and just all of this whining, complaining. The whole world has always been against me because of the color of my skin. And even this situation where this person has been represented to me as my voice in the royal family because she's a shade darker than Harry. And so, but I'm angry because she's not dark enough. And this is yet one more time. And I've been victimized. And this is yet one more time. And the whiteness wins. It's like, stop it. Stop. Everybody who's whining and complaining, just stop it. Go make something of your life. Because what is essentially happening here is that, the movers and the shakers of society, the people with the money and the power, they're going ahead and being and doing and running this world and giving all the commoners just a little something to fight about so that we'll sling mud and cry. Well, they continue to be rich and famous and run the world. Do you want to be part of the powerful elite? I mean, if that is at all a concern for you, then shut up, stop crying, and go and be and do. And unfortunately, we're living in a world that more and more and more is awarding this kind of petty crying. But let me tell you something right now. The rewards for petty crying and carrying on are only so that you're going to, you might become well known. You will never be on top of the world. You are only useful in so much that you can keep the commoners crying and slinging mud and in a shambles. So you may be slightly elevated amongst the dirt, amongst the sad, pathetic peasants on the bottom. You may be a little elevated. You will never be truly important because you too are being used. So just go out and be a genuine person that helps their community and does real things. This kind of garbage is ruining the world. Move on from it. Anyway, I've gotten way off. During those first days of the afterglow, Meghan maintained her control of events. Just as the wedding guest list remained undisclosed, the couple's honeymoon destination was a guarded secret. If Meghan can't handle life in the royal goldfish bowl, suggested one observer, unaware of the growing tension in the palaces, no one can. All right, well, she can't handle it, and we're about to see everything come crashing down like 2 hot seconds after the wedding. Now, let us not forget that unseen, Oprah Winfrey was texting Meghan. They're besties now. Thrilled to be acknowledged by California royalty, Meghan was delighted that Oprah had visited Doria. Her only misgivings were directed at those within Kensington Palace, her staff and the Cambridges. None realized that she remained in constant contact with all of her advisors in California, her entertainment lawyer, her business manager, and her publicists. She never intended to stay. And that is what became overwhelmingly clear in this chapter. This was the jumping off point for her to leave. And this is exactly, I think, a lot like, remember when she got married to Trevor? And how we said that it was weird that she had married him because from the beginning of their nuptials, she had been trying to erase the fact that it had even happened. And this is she's always so many steps ahead of the guy that she's with. Remember how she secretly got married to him in LA, had the paperwork buried, and then at the actual event, she wouldn't let anybody take any pictures. She destroyed the evidence, the videotape of the event. She destroyed that. The only person who had any pictures was her dad, who refused to put his camera away. So Meghan goes through life acting like she's right here with us and that she is experiencing everything just like, just like you are. No. She has everything mapped out, planned out, 15, 20 steps ahead. This wedding was her party to re-enter Hollywood. That's why all the celebrities were invited. That's why she kicked her dad off the list and invited an entertainment lawyer. I mean, it's unbelievable how blatant it is. And I think that people back then probably were putting pieces together. Certainly people in the palace who knew all about the guest list before the rest of the world did. But I don't know. I absolutely can tell you, I had no idea how clear it was that this was her party for herself and who she was hoping to be next. It had nothing to do with her wedding to Harry. All right, this episode has gone on for like an hour, and the timestamp right now is 1 hour and 25. I know when I edit it down, it's going to be a lot less than that, but it's still going to be well past an hour, so I better go. But this was incredibly interesting. Now, I can promise you that the next chapter is going to be a 2-part chapter because it is so long. It's like a mini book itself, and it's called Tremors, and it's all about the chaos that is happening as Harry and Meghan are deciding they want to leave. That's also an interesting chapter because up until this point, I think that Tom Bower has been painted as a pretty sympathetic character, but in the next chapter, we start to see his own bitterness coming out, and I think he had every right to be very hurt by Meghan. Absolutely. But he is being painted not as less sympathetic, but definitely as angrier. And his anger is being exposed in the next chapter. And I haven't even finished the next chapter, but I can tell you it's going to be juicy deliciousness. So stay tuned for that. Bye, guys.